reports of the cloud. All right, so welcome again. This is ProQuest Formatting. So we'll talk about manuscript layout and pagination of the thesis and dissertation. So the first thing to mention is that we're going to be covering the guidelines in the new thesis and dissertation guide that we just finished late spring, early summer this year. That was done in conjunction with a few different offices on campus, mainly the graduate school, and consulting with some folks who review these before they go in for publication. So we'll cover that, tell you how to use the thing and what you can find in there. Some general layout expectations. We won't have time to cover everything, but I'm going to give you the rundown of the big stuff, the things that we see students running into problems with the most often, which are your section breaks and headings, your pagination, and if we have time, the table of contents. So just a quick overview. ProQuest is a repository managed by the Library of Congress. It's essentially just a searchable database with built-in resources where all of the theses and dissertations through A-State are published. So that sort of last stage in your degree completion process as far as writing these things go. So the formatting that we're looking at are rules both from ProQuest and from our university. So the formatting will be different than what you're probably used to. This can be found, and this is where I'm going to start sharing multiple screens with you. So you can find the information we're going to cover in the thesis and dissertation guide. You should be able to see my entire desktop hand of the screen here. This is the new thesis and dissertation guide. You can access this through the graduate school's website. I'm actually going to add it to the Writing Center's graduate support page as well. So you'll be able to find it in a couple of locations. But it is a PDF, it's there in PDF format. You can download it, print it, whatever you want. So just a quick rundown. You see we do have a brief introduction that tells you what you can find here, but we're going to just look at the table of contents. So there are two main sections to this guide. Everything that we're going to talk about today is in section 2. Section 1 covers sort of all of your preparation and has some checklists in there for the forms that you need to fill out for your thesis and dissertation process. And those are all things that you should definitely review with your advisor. But section 2 is where we're going to be working today. And as you can see, this covers really just all of the formatting of the entire document. So jumping down, you've also got an intro here that I highly recommend you reading pretty closely. But that's what we're working in today. So I'm going to kind of show this screen in tandem with an example document here in just a moment. So we really, really recommend that you do not complete your thesis or dissertation work in any software other than Microsoft. The downloading process really shifts your formatting around, and as you're sending that back and forth between your advisor, between the review office here on campus, things get moved and it kind of just slows your process down and can lead to some really big frustrations. So really recommend that you work in Microsoft only, and I do believe it's still a free download for students through the university IT. You may not quote me on that, but double check. So if you're working somewhere else, really recommend doing your formatting in Microsoft. So we're only going to refer to Microsoft Word in both the guide and in this presentation. So before you write, it's really important that you check that your font, line spacing, margins, and pagination settings are all correct in Microsoft. Don't ever trust the defaults. That is a big issue, and especially because it is going to be just a little different than maybe what is required just in your coursework. All right, so now I'm going to switch away from the guide into this practice document that I have for you. And I'm actually going to zoom in a little on that just to make this just a bit bigger. That should do. So once you're in your word processor, and I will side note, I'm working on a Mac, so my settings are going to be in slightly different places than yours if you're working in really any other platform. So just kind of keep that in mind, that the settings are the same, you just are going to find them in different places. So this is my practice document, lorem ipsum text, so fake, fake language. But the first thing that you want to do is adjust your view. So you're going to find your view settings wherever they may be. You're going to want to show your ruler. You're going to want to show your navigation pane, right? I want to see, where I'm at in my document and at a given time. So some handy tips for consistency. And this is where we can get into our, just our general sort of page setup stuff. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to File and Page Setup to do this. And again, Mac's a little weird, and I have to go into this a little bit differently. You may not have to take these steps, and that's okay. So for your entire document, your left margins and right margins are going to be 1 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and set those now. And so we're not going to mess with the top. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because our top margin changes between certain sections of our paper. But our bottom is always going to be 1 inch, and our left and right are always going to be 1 1/4 inch. So something to note is that in your margins, most of the time your default setting is always going to be, the measurement's always going to be in inches. When we switch over to line spacing, that's going to be in points. So it's more of a digital design measurement than the inches that we may be used to, but I'm going to convert that for you and show you what that setting is. So here we're looking at inches. When we get to line spacing, we'll be looking at points. So information to file away for later. So once that's set, you also want to, let's see, we're not going to mess with any of our header settings just yet. We're going to go ahead and hit OK, and that's going to shift all of my alignments over to 1 1/4 inch, and I can kind of see that here in my ruler. So goody, we're set there. We also want to look at our line spacing options, which for me, it's this little button here. So options, and I want to make sure that I've got zeros everywhere. So 0 in indentation and 0 before and after my lines. So you can see here the points that I was just mentioning. For whatever reason, we're in points on these settings and inches on our margins, but so just keep that in mind. All right, so we've got zeros across the board, and our layout should be the same for the whole document so far, right? So those are the settings that you can rely on, not going anywhere for this whole process. The next thing we want to look at is we're going to keep in mind that when we add section and chapter titles, those are always going to be centered and start a new page of text. So just really quick, I'm going to go down a couple pages. So if this is the start of chapter 1, and you may have a fancy title for chapter 1, and that's fantastic. But if this is the start of chapter 1, I want to make sure that it is centered. And that it starts a new page. So say chapter 2 starts somewhere right here. I'm not going to leave it here, right? I'm going to move it to a new page. What I really want to caution you about is sometimes we have students who have the habit of just hitting the enter button until it's all the way on a new page. Do not do that. That's going to mess up all of your formatting that we're going to do for your different sections. So to move this, you're going to hit, for Mac, it's Command Enter. For other platforms, it is Control Enter. So just with that movement, I've got my stuff on a new page. And I also, again, want to make sure that that is centered. Okay. So those are your basics that you can rely on. So those are our standards. Those are the things that are going to happen for the whole document. And knowing that our top margins are going to be a little different. So pay attention to those guidelines for each section of the text. Now, you can use your heading settings in your word processor. These do take a few minutes to set up, but if you do them on the front end, it is a nice tool to use throughout your writing process or when you kind of finish up and finalize all your formatting. I'll show you really quickly how to do that, but it's not what we're going to play with today just because it takes so long to get them set up. So you want to make sure to do this that you are under your home tab in your toolbar. And we're going to go to Styles pane, I believe is what I'm looking for. Yes, I'm going to go to Styles pane, and this opens up this huge menu. And what this is are all of the sort of preset styles that are just kind of preloaded into Microsoft Word. But what you can do is change them to these settings that I have listed for you here. So these are, we've spent a lot of time studying this guide and all of the kind of rules for formatting. These are the 4 heading styles that you'll use throughout this entire document. So what you see in white here are the settings that you would be changing these styles to. And here in red are the sections of your text that this applies to. So your most common are these first 2. And the biggest differences that you'll see are your shifts between your top margins and the style of pagination. So from between Roman and Arabic numerals. All right, so this is where you play with those settings. I'm just going to select one at random, and I'm going to click this drop down menu, and I'm going to click modify style. I do recommend using this. Again, it takes a few minutes to establish, but once it's done, you don't have to do it again, and you can kind of just click on it and change that section's formatting in just one click rather than several. So again, these are preset. So I'm going to have to change all of this to what I know it needs to be. Now your font is going to be different, but depending on which style guide you work in. So whether some of you may be working in APA format, some of you MLA, Chicago, and then several others. So you kind of, for your font and your subheading formatting and how you cite sources, that all still falls under the umbrella of your citation style guide. So those are going to be different for each of you most likely, but I'm just going to go with the standard Times New Roman 12-point font, and I want to make sure that that's black always. There's no point in your text where your text should be a different color than black unless you are in some sort of digital design or art field where you're displaying something in a really specific way. So small exceptions, but usually standard across the board here. Now I also want to play around with my margins in these settings. So I want to switch from format to paragraph. And again, making sure that these are always 0. Then we can also kind of play with whether we want that text to be centered. So if we're only using this to set up our chapter title settings, then we can recenter things, and we can change around the borders if that's relevant, right? Several other things. So again, this is something that's useful. Takes a while to set up to start with, but useful if you do it early in your process, and then it's those changes are made automatically when you select a certain piece of text. So I didn't save my changes, so that's obviously not doing what I want it to do there, but you put that back where it goes. All right. So moving on. Some other handy tips for consistency. So keeping open, keeping those style pane settings like you want them. And this is how you kind of walk through all of that I just showed you. So the next big thing to format that's going to be vastly different than what you're probably used to is your front matter. So your title page, abstract, acknowledgements, things like that. So our title page, obviously, is the very first page of our document. And this is where we get to play with a lot of fun spacing techniques. So your title page has a 2-inch top margin, and we can see that our default is 1. So in order to do that, we want 2 inches, and we don't want to guess. So we don't want to just kind of randomly hit our enter button until we get there. We want to make sure that this is done correctly because it is picked up in the review process, and it's going to get bumped back to you, and you're going to get frustrated. And so we just want to do it right the first time. So we can go to layout and margins, and I'm going to go to custom. So we're not really messing with our header and footer, but we are going to go back to this page. So again, all of this is standard, but our top is going to change for this section. So 2-inch margins for our title page. Now, right now, that has changed our entire document. That's why it's nifty to keep this outline open. So you can kind of see the changes as they're happening across your whole document. So we want a 2-inch margin here, or 2-inch top margin, sorry. And we are going to go back to my checklist because it's easier to see. And so all of our other margins stay the same. Our bottom margin is 1 inch. Now, the other deal is that all of our text is centered. So we're going to select everything on this page, go back to our home tab, and center. Great, that's easy, right? That's probably something most of you have done before. Now, here's where things get weird. This is where I've got to enter specific measurements of distance. And we do have a typo here that should be 1 inch and not 1 foot. But so to do this, I'm going to put my cursor before the first letter on the line that needs to move. And I am going to go back to my line spacing deal here. So line spacing options. And I'm going to, just on this line, I'm going to insert space before. And so I can just clickety click and you can kind of see what's happening, right? Again, that's going to be our preview. But I've already done the math and consulted with some digital design folks. We know that 1 inch equals 77 points. And I don't know why that's not on my slide, but it should be. So now I know that I have 1 inch between my title and my name. And it's going to be the same thing for this next line, which is the university statement. So all of you, no matter what, are going to have the university statement below your name. It is the same unless you are doing a thesis and not a dissertation, right? We would change dissertation to thesis, and we would change the actual name of our degree. So we're going to go here again, and I'm going to go back again into my line spacing options, and I'm going to make sure that I have got 77 points or 1 inch in between these two pieces of text. And then, so what's next? My university affiliation is going to be 2 inches. So again, it's just math here, right? So 77 times 2, 144. Again, this is tedious, right? But it is necessary, unfortunately. But once you've done it a couple of times, right, it's easy to get back into it, and it's easy to make those changes. Let's see. So then we have our approval date with no space, right? So it's just below the university a statement and affiliation. But now our approvers list, we want it to be at the very bottom of the page. Now we can play with our line spacing and try to make sure that it's down there. So let's just guess that it's another 2 inches. But wait, whoops, that backs me up and puts my third approver on another page. So not quite enough, or I mean, a little too much rather. So let's back that off a little and see what happens. All right, so this one, there is no true measurement because your title might be longer than someone else's. So it's kind of just a matter of getting in here and playing with that setting until, whoops, until your approvers are all down at the furthest point on the page that they can be. So let's get back. I think I was at 136, so let's try 138. Right, okay, that looks good. We're gonna stop playing with it at that point and just kind of move on. But that, generally speaking, is where everything's gonna fall on your page. Now, there are some other rules for capitalization, and I've already shown you how to do that, but just as a repeat, or as a review rather, let's see. Our title is going to be all caps. So again, to do that, I'm just going to select that whole thing, and I'm going to go into my format, font, and choose, if it pops up, it's being a little slow, and just choose all caps. And there we go. And so any other place that you see this, so like Doctor of Education, that's got to be all caps. You can do this each time. Whoops, I don't know why I'm clicking on that. All right. So what you want to do is just follow the checklist here and make sure that each of those things are appearing as they should. And I think I've got you all set there. Now, somewhere along the line, we ended up with an extra page of text here, and we don't want that. So all we've got to do is just hit the delete button if we put our cursor at the front of that first line of text. So some sections of your document are going to require that 2-inch top margin, and the pagination will change from lowercase Roman numerals to Arabic numerals. To achieve the changing pagination in the top margins, you'll need to create section breaks in different places of your document. This is another thing I like to show in this workshop, just because it's very likely that you've never used this setting before. So there is a difference between a page break and a section break. Earlier, when I showed you the command or control enter, that is just a page break. What we're talking about, a section break, is a sort of invisible to you marker within your document that splits up the formatting. It creates a formatting section within your text that you can't see unless we have this selected, this little paragraph view. So that's another thing you're going to want to turn on when you're ready to do this, just to make sure it's there. So see, it's telling me I've got a page break here. I want to take it away. It's invisible, right? So in order to do that, let's see. So there are really just two big changes here. Well, there aren't just two, but there are two big distinct differences with your pagination. So you've got Roman numerals and you've got Arabic numerals. Now your front matter is going to be Roman numerals and everything else is Arabic. So your front matter includes your title page, where your page number will be suppressed. I'll show you how to do that. Your copyright page, which is optional. If you choose to copyright your work, you'll have this page. Then your abstract, dedication, and acknowledgements. Again, dedication and acknowledgements are typically optional. Abstracts are pretty much expected across the board. Double check with your advisor on that, though, for your field. Table of contents, and then a list of tables and figures if you have them. All of those should have Roman numerals. Everything else is going to be So the actual body of your thesis or dissertation, all of the chapters, any appendices that you might include, and then your bibliography or references pages. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to pretend, because I don't have all the titles in here, again, this is just a fake document. We're going to pretend like our front matter is just these first couple of pages here, and that my chapters are, you know, all that I have of my dissertation. So again, I've just entered a page break to separate my matter from my body text. So what I need now are section breaks to split these up. So pretend, right, suspend disbelief and pretend that these 2 pages have all of my front matter, all right? So we are going to place my cursor at the first, before the first letter of the first word of my front matter stuff. And then I'm going to go to insert. My insert is going to be, again, this top left menu. So insert, break, and I'm looking for section break, continuous. All right. And so you can see that now, because I have, where's my view pane? Because I have my paragraph view selected, I can see that section break. But I want not to have had a full blank page here. So what I can actually do is delete, but I don't want to go too far because I don't want my section break to be on that page. So I hit delete twice by accident. I'm going to delete once. And now my section break is breaking up my title page from my abstract page, right? We'll call this my abstract. I don't have a copyright. Oops. All right. So what this allows me to do then is to not only change how my pages are numbered, but whether or not I've got a 1-inch margin or a 2-inch margin. So this is allowing me to do both of those things. I'm going to go ahead so I'm going to go down to the bottom, right? So this is the bottom of my front matter. Let's pretend that that encompasses everything that I need in my front matter. And I'm going to insert another break here, just to make sure that this whole section is completely split from the section that follows it. So I've got a section break, and I want to keep my page break because I want my chapter to start on its own page. So now anything that I do within these 2 section breaks is going to apply to every page in that section. Okay, so I'm going to start, let's see, let me not get too far off track here. Alrighty, so our page numbers, regardless of what your style guide says, our page numbers for our thesis and dissertation are always going to be centered at the bottom of our page. So to do this, it's really a matter, there are a couple of ways, but the quickest is to kind of double click down here and get your header and footer settings to open. So that's going to take me directly to this view where I can see all of my page number, footer stuff. So I'm going to insert a page number, but I want to format them. I want to make sure that these are exactly what I want them to be. So once I have that menu open, I'm going to back up a few slides here. So bear with me for just a second to my headings here, because this is where I've got all this stuff listed. So on my title page, copyright, well, where'd you go? My title page, copyright page, abstract, dedication, and table of contents all still have this 2-page top margin. So I don't need to mess with that. But I've also got Roman numerals for my pagination. So I'm going to enter my formatting to my lowercase Roman numerals. And I don't have a previous section yet, but because our front matter also includes tables and figures, illustrations, abbreviations, and symbols, but it has a 1-inch top margin, this is where I would click continue from previous section, because my top margin is going to be different, but my page numbers are going to continue on in the same order in Roman style. So here, I'm just going to click OK. And now I should have, it did not. Okay, let's do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to insert, oopsie, insert page numbers, bottom of the page in the footer, centered. And I'm going to double check this formatting again. So I've got Roman numerals and start at 1. Click OK. And here, so once I've clicked OK, I get the option to show number on first page. I want to take this away. I want this suppressed on my title page. So I'm going to unclick here. So now I should not show a number here, but I should show a 2 here, and I do, but there's a mistake. I've got Arabic numerals instead of Roman. So let me format that again. Sometimes it's tricky and you have to do things multiple times, unfortunately, but we're going to get there. So number format, Roman, start at, OK. There we go. No. Again, if you're running into this, this is great for troubleshooting. I'm going to, so see it's starting at 1 and I wanted it to start at 2 instead of there. So I go back in and I just change it. It's easy. Great. So now we're correct. Now we've got the correct page numbers within this section. Now you can see where my section break exists, my continuous section break, how it switches from Roman to Arabic. We actually do want that. But what we don't want are to have the same margins on every page. So now let's pretend that we're completely finished with all of our front matter. So our heading 1 styles, these bits here, and move on. So to our, I'm going to kind of skip over to this last option to show you the 1-inch top margin switch. So we're going to pretend like this is not our chapters, but that it is our bibliography or appendices. So to change that margin, again, I want to make sure that I've got my section breaks created. It does not hurt to do it again. So if I know that I'm switching between these formatting styles, I'm going to go ahead and insert another break, continuous section break at the top of the section I want to change. And I think it popped it up there. Yeah, but that's okay because I know that there's a separation here. And then I'm going to pop it down here. It's just for visual reference. I'm just going to do it here. Continuous. All right, so I've got it in both places. But I just want a 1-inch margin here instead of a 2. So I'm double clicking into this or making sure that I'm clicked within this section and not in this section, right? Because if I click up here, it's going to change everything that's up here rather than what's down here. So I want to make sure I'm down in the right section. And then I can go, I'm going to go into custom. Okay, so now we're showing my 2-inch margin currently, and I just want the 1 in just this section. So I'm going to hit OK, and you could see that visually jump up to 1 inch, but let's make sure. Yep, and we can see it. It is still just keeping my 2-inch margins on this section, but 1 inch in this section. So that's what we want. That's what a lot of students struggle with when they're writing and formatting these things, and that is how you switch it. But if you'll notice, right, we've got 2 inch up here in this section. We've got 1 inch up here in this section. But because I put that section break in between these pages, it did not make that change in this section. So again, that's what I mean by those section breaks are kind of creating miniature documents within your overall document that are invisible to you unless you have this selected. So those are the big formatting questions that we see really often. And I want to show you that this is a lot less confusing when you look at it in the guide rather than my presentation. So in this section, again, section 2 of the guide, you've got really detailed explanations for each individual section, including all of these margin settings and where to put those page breaks or section breaks in order to achieve the formatting that you need. But we've done it with sort of paragraph style explanations as well as a checklist, so you can make sure that each section has exactly what it should have. So I highly recommend kind of looking at this really closely when you get ready to turn in your formatting before you send it in for review. You can also bring it to someone in the Writing Center. The tutors there have access to this document and can walk through it with you. But yeah, so this is it. Things get a little bit trickier, not trickier, but just more steps when you start entering your tables and figures. And really briefly, I don't think we have the time to show you all of the settings, but I'll really briefly show you the table of contents, how to do that. So I'm just going to randomly click somewhere in this document rather than where it actually should be, but just kind of roll with me here. So I want a table of contents. And this tells you exactly where it's supposed to be, but I'm going to show you just kind of how to do that. And I mean, it is in references now. So table of contents. And you get all of these kind of preset options for how to do it. You're going to want to customize this and make sure that it follows all of these specific settings. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of grab any of them. Sorry. I'm going to grab this one. Now, this is why it's not going to let me show you a quick version, actually. So this is the other reason why it's really recommended that you play with these headings that I showed you at the very beginning. Because when you use these style settings, what it does in Word is it sort of allows that to be automatically generated into your table of contents. So what that would do is any text that has been set with a heading setting, this is a mouthful, any text that has been formatted with a heading setting will automatically populate into your table of contents, which makes creating that so much easier and will help you to format it correctly based on these instructions. So again, some of these things are really, really tedious. And I know that we bounced around between kind of several topics, and no one is expected to walk away from this, you know, with a full, yes, I can do that right away, no problem. But that is why the guide is so detailed.